Manila Salinas, a lonely billionaire widow, accepts an invitation from her butler, Miguel Gonzalez, to Christmas dinner. What happened next was incredible. Can a simple Christmas dinner hold the key to unlocking hope, healing, and unexpected connections? Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. Manila Salinas stood by the grand bay window of her opulent estate, a vast expanse of snow-covered land stretching out before her. The soft glow of the lights adorning the nearby trees twinkled like stars against the backdrop of an inky winter sky. Snowflakes danced lazily in the air, each one unique, yet they all fell silently, blanketing the world outside in a pristine layer of white. The holiday season had arrived, but for Manila, the warmth of Christmas felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the deep loneliness that had settled in her heart since her husband's passing 2 years ago. The estate, a sprawling mansion with high ceilings and lavish decorations, felt strangely empty. Each room was adorned with festive decorations, from the intricately designed ornaments hanging from the grand Christmas tree in the foyer to the garlands draping elegantly over the ornate fireplace. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding her, the house echoed with silence. The laughter and joy that once filled these halls had faded away, leaving behind remnants of what used to be. Her children, Alejandro and Lucia, had moved away to pursue their own lives, their absence a constant reminder of the void left behind. As she gazed out, memories flooded her mind, each one more bittersweet than the last. She could almost hear the echoes of her husband's laughter, the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke of their family's holiday traditions, the way he would lift their children high in the air, their giggles ringing through the house like music. Now, those memories felt like ghosts, haunting her during this festive season. She wrapped her arms around herself, seeking comfort in her own embrace, but it was fleeting. The warmth of cocoa and gingerbread wafting from the kitchen seemed to mock her solitude. Just then, the sound of soft footsteps echoed down the hallway, breaking her reverie. Miguel Gonzalez, her faithful butler and confidant, entered the room with a tray in hand. The golden light from the chandelier above cast a warm glow on his neatly pressed uniform, a comforting sight amid the chill that enveloped her heart. The tray held a steaming cup of rich cocoa, topped with a generous swirl of whipped cream, and a plate of freshly baked cookies, an offering meant to soothe her weary spirit. Miguel had been with her through thick and thin, a steadfast presence in the tumultuous waves of her life. He approached her with a gentle smile, his eyes filled with the understanding that came from years of service and loyalty. He placed the tray on a nearby table, the delicate clinking of porcelain breaking the silence in the room. He stood by her side, offering a reassuring presence that felt like a warm blanket on a cold winter's night. He encouraged her to join him for the Christmas Eve dinner he had meticulously planned. The aroma of roasted turkey and spiced apples wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of pine from the decorations. Miguel had gone above and beyond, transforming the dining room into a winter wonderland, with flickering candles casting a soft glow and the table set with the finest china. Yet, despite his efforts, Manila felt the weight of her reluctance. She dreaded the thought of spending the evening alone with her thoughts, the shadows of her memories lurking in every corner. The truth was, she didn't want to be alone, but the idea of celebrating without her children felt unbearable. She had hoped they would come home for the holidays, but the reality was stark and painful. They were busy with their own lives, and as much as she wanted to be supportive, it stung to know that they wouldn't be there to share in the warmth and joy of the season. Reluctantly, she acquiesced to Miguel's gentle insistence. She nodded, her heart heavy, realizing that her longing for companionship outweighed her desire to wallow in solitude. As they made their way to the dining room, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for the evening ahead. The anticipation of Miguel's delightful cooking and stories from his own holiday traditions brought a flicker of warmth to her heart, a reminder that she wasn't entirely alone in her grief. As Miguel prepared the table, his hands deftly arranging the plates and cutlery with practiced care, he shared tales of his own family's Christmas traditions. He spoke of his childhood home, where the scent of tamales filled the air, and the joy of gathering with loved ones around the table. Manila listened intently, captivated by his stories that painted vivid pictures of laughter and togetherness. The way he recounted the mischief of his younger siblings, the games they played, and the joy of sharing meals reminded her of the warmth she once felt during the holidays. With each story, she felt the ice around her heart begin to thaw, even if just a little. Miguel's presence was a balm to her aching soul, a reminder that connection could still be found in the most unexpected places. The dining room came alive with the delicious aromas and the flickering light of the candles, creating an atmosphere that was both cozy and inviting. Yet, even as she appreciated Miguel's efforts, the shadows of her past loomed large. Her children's absence felt like a chasm that could not be bridged, and as she sat down at the beautifully set table, the realization of her solitude weighed heavily on her heart. She glanced at the empty chairs across from her, imagining the laughter and banter that would fill the space if her family were present. The thought made her chest tighten, and she forced herself to focus on the warmth of the cocoa in her hands, hoping it would stave off the chill of loneliness that threatened to envelop her. As they sat down to dinner, the conversation flowed easily, with Miguel sharing anecdotes and Manila listening, her heart slowly opening to the possibility of joy once more. Yet, beneath the surface, she couldn't shake the feeling of something unresolved, a longing for her children and the connections that felt so fragile. The evening wore on, filled with the clinking of silverware and the soft glow of candlelight, but the shadows of her heart remained, waiting for the unexpected twists that the night would soon unfold. As the dinner began, the golden glow of candlelight flickered across the grand dining room, illuminating the elaborate table set with fine china and crystal glasses. The aromas of roasted turkey, garlic mashed potatoes, and a medley of seasonal vegetables filled the air, wrapping around Manila like a warm embrace. She had always prided herself on hosting the perfect holiday dinner, and Miguel had outdone himself this year, selecting the finest ingredients and preparing each dish with care. The grand chandelier above cast intricate shadows on the walls, and the soft notes of a holiday melody played quietly in the background, creating an atmosphere that was both elegant and inviting. Sitting at the head of the table, Manila felt the weight of her solitude. The chairs that usually echoed with laughter and chatter now stood empty, save for Miguel, who served her with a polite smile. As he shared light-hearted anecdotes from his own family's Christmas traditions, she found herself listening more intently, a flicker of warmth igniting in her heart. Miguel's tales were filled with laughter, mischief, and the kind of love that could only be cultivated over years of shared memories. His enthusiasm was infectious, and for a moment, Manila allowed herself to be swept away by the stories of holiday mishaps and cherished moments. As the meal progressed, with each bite, she began to let her guard down. The flavors danced on her palate, and the nostalgia of past Christmases flooded her mind. She recalled the laughter of her children as they tore through the wrapping paper, the joy in her husband's eyes as he watched them with pride. Each memory was a bittersweet reminder of what she had lost, but it also served as a reminder of the love that had once filled this house. With Miguel's gentle encouragement, she found herself sharing a story of her late husband, Carlos, and his infamous attempts at cooking the holiday feast, which always ended with smoke billowing from the kitchen and laughter ringing through the halls. Manila's heart ached and swelled simultaneously, the bittersweetness of remembrance mingling with the warmth of cherished moments. Time slipped by unnoticed, and the table soon bore the remnants of their meal. Miguel cleared the plates with deft precision, the clatter of dishes a soothing symphony in the otherwise quiet room. Manila leaned back in her chair, feeling a sense of contentment that had eluded her for so long. The flickering candlelight and the remnants of the feast filled her with a sense of peace, a rare moment of solace in the midst of her loneliness. Just as she began to feel a semblance of joy, the sudden sound of the doorbell echoed through the grand estate, cutting through the tranquil ambience like a sharp knife. Manila's heart raced, a mix of surprise and uncertainty flooding her senses. Who could be visiting at such an hour? Miguel, ever the composed butler, glanced at her with a questioning look before excusing himself to answer the door. Manila's mind raced with possibilities, a whirlwind of emotions crashing through her as she sat in the dim light of the dining room, the shadows of the past lingering just beyond her reach. As Miguel moved toward the entrance, Manila felt a strange flutter in her chest. A tiny spark of hope mingled with anxiety. She had become accustomed to the silence of her home, the absence of the joyful chaos that had once filled every corner. As she sat in the stillness, her thoughts drifted to her children, now busy with their own lives, far from the warmth of their childhood home. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine their laughter echoing through the halls, the sound of their footsteps racing toward her, eager to share the gifts they had chosen for her. But the reality was starkly different, and the silence that enveloped her was heavy. The door creaked open, and the sound of muffled voices reached her ears. Manila's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding as she strained to hear. Miguel's voice was calm and welcoming, but it was the familiar laughter that sent a ripple of disbelief through her. She rose from her chair, her pulse quickening, as she felt an inexplicable pull toward the doorway. With cautious steps, she made her way through the grand hallway, the ornate decorations glimmering in the light. As she approached the entrance, she could see shadows moving just beyond the threshold. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. When she finally stepped into the foyer, her breath caught in her throat as her eyes fell upon a sight she had not dared to hope for. Standing there, bundled in winter coats, were her eldest son, Alejandro, and his wife, Sofia, alongside her daughter, Lucia, and her partner, Javier. The sight of them, together and smiling, sent a wave of emotions crashing over her. Alejandro, tall and strong, with the same dark hair as his father, looked at her with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Sofia, his wife, exuded warmth and cheer, while Lucia, her daughter, stood beside them, a radiant smile lighting up her face. Javier, with his easygoing demeanor, completed the scene, and in that instant, Manila felt her heart swell with a blend of joy and disbelief. Tears pricked at her eyes, blurring her vision as she took in the sight of her family, a vision she had longed for throughout the long, lonely months since her husband's passing. Overwhelmed, she stepped forward, taking in the sight of them all. Her heart raced as she reached out, embracing them one by one, her arms wrapping around each of them as if to hold onto the moment forever. The warmth of their bodies pressed against hers felt like a much-needed balm, healing the wounds of loneliness that had festered for far too long. She could feel the love radiating from them, a tangible force that filled the grand foyer, and for the first time in years, she felt whole. As they entered the house, the atmosphere shifted. The weight of the past seemed to lift, replaced by the lightness of reunion. Laughter echoed through the halls, a sound that had been absent for far too long. Miguel observed from a distance, a satisfied smile on his face as he watched the family embrace, the warmth of the moment filling the once quiet estate. He had hoped for this, for Manila to feel the love of her family envelop her, to experience the joy that had been missing from her life. In the warmth of the moment, Manila realized that this Christmas Eve had transformed into something extraordinary, a night that would forever change the course of her life. As she looked at her children, her heart brimmed with gratitude for the unexpected gift of their presence, a reminder that love, even when overshadowed by grief, could still bloom in the most unlikely of circumstances. The evening stretched ahead of them, filled with possibilities and connections waiting to be rekindled, and Manila felt a flicker of hope igniting within her, a promise of joy and togetherness that she had long thought lost to the past. As the family gathered in the grand living room of Manila Salinas estate, the atmosphere was thick with warmth and nostalgia. The room, adorned with twinkling lights and garlands, felt alive with the sounds of laughter and the scent of pine from the massive tree standing proudly in the corner. The soft flicker of the fireplace cast a golden hue across their faces as they exchanged hugs and heartfelt greetings, each embrace a reminder of the bonds that had weathered the storms of life. Manila stood at the periphery, her heart swelling with happiness as she watched her children, Alejandro and Lucia, interact with their partners, Sofia and Javier. The evening unfolded like a beautifully wrapped gift, revealing cherished memories of past Christmases. They reminisced about the years spent huddled together, sharing stories and traditions that had once defined their family. Alejandro, with his booming laughter, recalled the time they had built an enormous snowman in the backyard, only for it to be toppled over by a gust of wind moments after completion. Lucia, with her bright eyes, chimed in with tales of their mother's elaborate holiday feasts, each dish meticulously prepared and lovingly served. Sophia and Javier added their own anecdotes, weaving in new threads to the family tapestry, and the room vibrated with the joy of reconnection. Yet, as the evening wore on, the glimmer of happiness began to dim. Beneath the surface of laughter, a tension began to brew between Alejandro and Lucia. It started subtly, a slight shift in the tone of their voices, a lingering glance that hinted at unspoken disagreements. Manila observed with a heavy heart, her wish for familial harmony weighed down by the reality of their differing lifestyles. Alejandro had always been the pragmatic one, grounded and responsible, while Lucia embraced a freer, more adventurous spirit, often veering away from the conventional path that Alejandro held dear. The room, once filled with laughter, now echoed with the quiet discontent of unresolved issues. Manila felt caught in the middle, a fragile bridge between her children's contrasting worlds. She longed to diffuse the growing tension, to remind them of the love that bound them together. Yet, the more she hoped, the more apparent it became that the rift was widening. Miguel, the ever-observant butler, watched the unfolding drama with a keen eye. He had served the Salinas family for decades, witnessing their triumphs and tribulations, and he understood the nuances of their dynamics profoundly. Sensing the need for diversion, he pondered a game to lighten the atmosphere, a way to coax laughter back into the room. He had seen family gatherings turn sour before, and he was determined to prevent that from happening tonight. With a gentle yet strategic approach, Miguel suggested a game that would involve the entire family. He envisioned a light-hearted competition that would require collaboration and spark joy. He set up the rules, his voice steady and inviting, urging everyone to put aside their differences and engage in something fun. As they pulled together to play, the laughter initially returned, but the underlying grievances were still simmering just beneath the surface, waiting for their moment to burst forth. As the game progressed, the tension that had been momentarily lifted began to creep back in. Old grievances resurfaced, bubbles of frustration that had been suppressed for too long. Alejandro, unable to contain himself, made a sarcastic remark about Lucia's choices, suggesting that her lifestyle was reckless and irresponsible. Lucia shot back with equal fervor, challenging her brother's need for control and predictability. The rest of the family stood back, the laughter fading as the air thickened with discomfort. Manila's heart sank as she watched the confrontation unfold. She wanted to intervene, to restore the peace that had briefly graced their gathering, but she also understood that avoiding the conflict would not resolve the deeper issues at play. The evening, which had begun with such promise, was rapidly spiraling into a confrontational battleground. She felt the weight of her role as a mother, the responsibility to guide her children back to each other, but the task felt monumental. Miguel, witnessing the emotional turmoil, continued to observe silently from the sidelines. He was a man of few words, but his heart was filled with wisdom, shaped by years of service to the Salinas family. He recognized that the love shared among them was strong, but it was also fragile, easily fractured by misunderstanding and resentment. As the game came to an uneasy halt, he sensed an opportunity for healing, a chance to help the family rediscover their unity. With a calm yet firm demeanor, Miguel proposed a moment of reflection. He invited everyone to share a favorite Christmas memory, a time that had brought them joy and togetherness. The proposal was met with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Manila hoped that revisiting happy memories could serve as a balm for the hurt feelings that lingered in the room. Slowly, one by one, they began to share. Alejandro spoke of a Christmas when the family had made homemade ornaments, each with a story behind it. Lucia followed with a memory of their father reading The Night Before Christmas by the fire, his voice deep and soothing, making the words come alive. Sophia and Javier contributed their own tales, weaving in the traditions they had started as a couple, blending the old with the new. As the memories spilled forth, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter returned, mingling with the bittersweet nostalgia of their shared past. Manila watched, her heart lightening. In those moments of vulnerability, she saw glimpses of the love that had always tied them together, despite their differences. The room, once filled with the specter of conflict, began to hum with the warmth of shared history. However, the relief was short-lived, as the tensions that had simmered just below the surface began to re-emerge. The conversation shifted and old grievances resurfaced, rising like unwelcome guests at a festive gathering. Alejandro, unable to hold back, articulated his frustrations about Lucia's life choices, declaring them reckless and irresponsible. Lucia, fiery and passionate, countered with her own arguments, defending her right to choose her path without judgment. Manila felt the familiar ache in her chest, a mother's instinct to protect, to mend, to heal. She stood, poised to intervene, but Miguel's presence beside her was steadying. He understood the delicate balance of family dynamics, the need for each voice to be heard, even when the words stung. As the lively exchanges escalated, Miguel's heart ached for the Salinas family. He had always seen the beauty in the way they cared for one another, even amidst conflict. He felt a surge of determination to help them navigate through this turbulence. His years of experience told him that sometimes the path to healing lay in confronting the pain rather than avoiding it. With deep resolve, Miguel prepared to step in, ready to guide them through this tempestuous moment, hoping to remind them of the love that had always been their foundation. Little did he know that the true test of their bond was yet to come, a challenge that would require them to confront not only their differences but also the shadows of their pasts. The laughter in the living room had barely settled when Manila felt the need for a private conversation with Alejandro. She sensed an undercurrent of tension between her children, a tension that had become palpable over the years, marked by their differing lifestyles and choices. The holiday spirit, although rekindled by their surprise visit, was fragile. With the holiday lights twinkling around them, she motioned for Alejandro to join her in a quieter corner of the expansive living room, away from the festive noise that swirled like a warm embrace. As they moved to a more secluded spot, the flickering glow of the fireplace cast dancing shadows on the walls, providing a comforting backdrop for what she hoped would be a constructive dialogue. Alejandro, tall and imposing, bore the weight of his frustrations like a heavy cloak. His brow furrowed slightly, a telltale sign of the internal conflict he felt. Manila took a deep breath, her heart pounding softly as she broached the subject that had been gnawing at her. She spoke gently, encouraging him to put aside his grievances for just a moment. The words flowed from her with a mother's love, urging him to consider the importance of family and reconciliation. Manila understood her son's concerns about Lucia's choices. They were indeed reckless by his standards, but she also recognized that they were a part of the woman her daughter had become. In her heart, Manila wished for nothing more than for her children to find common ground, to understand each other, and to embrace the love they had for one another. Alejandro listened, his expression softening as he absorbed his mother's words. He glanced away, staring into the flames, which flickered and danced as if mirroring the turmoil in his soul. Manila could see the conflict in his eyes, the love for his sister battling against his protective instincts. She reached out, placing a hand on his arm, grounding him in the moment. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Miguel was busy preparing dessert, the sweet aroma of baked goods filling the air. He meticulously arranged the plates, each a work of art, while also keeping an ear tuned to the living room. The tension between Alejandro and Lucia had not escaped him. He had witnessed the dynamic shift during dinner, and as a father figure of sorts to the Salinas family, he felt a keen responsibility to help them navigate their conflicts. Miguel's mind raced as he contemplated how best to intervene. He had seen families torn apart by misunderstandings and miscommunication, and he did not want to see the Salinas family fall into that trap. He had spent years observing their interactions, learning the nuances of their personalities. Alejandro was fiercely protective, while Lucia was fiercely independent. They loved each other, but their differences seemed insurmountable at times. As he prepared the dessert, Miguel made a mental note to find an opportunity to bridge the gap between the siblings. He believed that a little nudge in the right direction could work wonders. However, for now, he focused on creating a beautiful presentation, hoping that the dessert would serve as a sweet distraction from the underlying tensions. Back in the living room, Manila could sense a shift in Alejandro's demeanor. While he still harbored frustrations, he began to articulate some of his feelings. She was grateful for this breakthrough, as it felt like a small victory in a battle she had fought silently for years. Yet, as they spoke, she couldn't shake the feeling that the conversation was teetering on a precipice. Her heart ached for both of her children. They were both so stubborn and set in their ways. Yet she knew there was still love beneath the surface. Manila wished she could impart the wisdom of her lived experiences, how fleeting moments were and how valuable family bonds could be. She thought of the countless Christmases spent together, the laughter and chaos, the stories shared around the table, and how easily they could slip away if they weren't nurtured. The conversation lingered, as Manila gently nudged Alejandro to think about the bigger picture. It was not just about Lucia's choices. It was about the love they shared as siblings. She hoped that by opening this dialogue, she could ease the burden of resentment that had settled between them. Yet, as she watched her son grapple with his feelings, she realized that the journey toward understanding would take time. In the kitchen, Miguel continued to eavesdrop on the conversation while pretending to be engrossed in his task. He could hear the soft tones of Manila's voice and the occasional sharper retort from Alejandro. Each word hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Miguel's heart tugged at the thought of how easily misunderstandings could escalate into rifts that could last a lifetime. He finished plating the desserts, a medley of chocolate mousse, fruit tarts, and a traditional bûche de Noël, each layer crafted with care. As he stepped back to admire his handiwork, he took a deep breath, hoping that the sweetness would help to alleviate the bitterness that had crept into the family dynamic. The table was set beautifully, and he felt a sense of pride in creating a moment that might help heal the fractures within the family. As the dessert was finally ready to be served, Miguel steeled himself for the moment. He knew that the atmosphere was still thick with tension, and he hoped that the delightful array of sweets could serve as a balm for the frayed edges of the evening. He called out to Manila and Alejandro, ready to present the fruit of his labor. Before he could make his way to the living room, Manila, sensing the moment was right, decided to share a story of her late husband. She had often turned to her memories of him during difficult times, and she knew that recalling his spirit might remind her children of the love that had once united them all so strongly. Gathering her thoughts, she began to recount a cherished memory, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. She spoke of a particular Christmas many years ago, when her husband had gone to great lengths to surprise her with a gift that had taken weeks of planning. The way he had beamed with pride as he presented it to her, how they had laughed together amidst the chaos of their children, the joy that had filled their home, and how that love had woven them together as a family. Her story painted a vivid picture, and as she spoke, Manila could see Alejandro's expression shift. He was captivated, drawn into the warmth of her memory, and somewhere in Lucia's heart, a seed of nostalgia began to sprout as well. The tale of their father was a reminder of the bonds they had formed, of the love that had once enveloped them all. But in the kitchen, Miguel could feel the tension still lingering, the unspoken words and unresolved issues that remained. He hoped that the dessert would serve as a catalyst for healing, a sweet offering to accompany the heartfelt story that Manila was sharing. With the dessert in hand, he prepared to step into the living room, ready to unveil his creations. The moment felt significant, and Miguel couldn't help but feel that perhaps tonight would be the night that the Salinas family would take one step closer to mending their fractures. He silently wished for them, for their love and understanding to flourish once again, even in the face of adversity. As Manila shared the heartfelt story of her late husband, a hush fell over the room. The flickering candlelight danced in their eyes, and for a moment, the weight of unresolved issues seemed to lift. Memories of laughter, love, and shared dreams flooded back, igniting a warmth that had long been absent from the Salinas estate. Alejandro, with his brow furrowed, listened intently, his usual bravado softened by nostalgia. Beside him, Lucia wiped away a tear, her defenses crumbling as she recalled the family gatherings filled with joy and unity. The story resonated deeply, evoking a sense of longing for the connection they had once shared. Manila's voice trembled slightly as she spoke of her husband's kindness and unwavering support. She painted a vivid picture of their early years together, how they had faced challenges hand in hand, their love growing stronger with each passing season. The children could almost hear their father's laughter echoing in the halls, feel his presence wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Just as the emotional dam seemed poised to break, a loud crash shattered the intimacy of the moment. The sound came from the kitchen, a cacophony of metal clattering against the tiled floor. The laughter and warmth dissipated, replaced with startled expressions and wide eyes. Manila's heart sank. She feared the fragile peace they had begun to build would crumble under the weight of embarrassment. Miguel rushed into the room, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and concern. He had dropped a tray laden with dessert plates and cutlery, the remnants of their earlier meal now strewn across the floor. In an instant, the tension that had enveloped the family was broken. The sight of Miguel, usually so composed, flustered, and apologetic, drew a ripple of laughter from the group. Alejandro, unable to suppress a grin, leaned back in his chair, while Lucia stifled a giggle, shaking her head at Miguel's clumsiness. "Not the best time for a kitchen disaster," he mumbled, attempting to gather the scattered pieces, his cheeks still tinged with red. The laughter was infectious, and within moments, the room felt lighter, the heaviness of the earlier conversation dissipating like morning fog in the sun. Manila watched with a mix of relief and gratitude as her children began to tease Miguel about his mishap. The atmosphere shifted dramatically, the tension melting away like snow under the warm glow of the fireplace. It was a welcome reprieve, a reminder that amidst the struggles and misunderstandings, joy could still find a place in their hearts. As they helped Miguel clean up, the playful banter flowed freely, and stories of past Christmas mishaps emerged. Lucia recounted the time she had accidentally set off the smoke alarm while baking cookies for the first time, and Alejandro chimed in with a tale of his own cooking disaster that had left the family dining on takeout. Laughter erupted, the sound echoing off the walls of the grand estate, filling the void that had threatened to consume them only moments before. Once the kitchen was restored to order, the family returned to the warmth of the living room, where the flickering fire cast a cozy glow. Manila felt a wave of relief wash over her, grateful for the way laughter had woven its magic back into their lives. As they settled into their seats, she raised her glass, a smile breaking across her face. "To family and love," she declared, her voice steady and filled with emotion. The clinking of glasses resonated like a promise, a commitment to hold on to the connections that mattered most. Alejandro and Lucia exchanged glances, their earlier disputes momentarily forgotten, replaced by the shared warmth of the evening. They drank deeply, a toast not only to the festive season, but to the bonds that had been tested yet remained intact. As Manila looked into her children's eyes, she felt a renewed sense of hope. They were together, and in that moment, it seemed as if the shadows of their past grievances had begun to recede. Yet, even as they basked in the glow of the evening, Manila sensed that the lingering issues among them had not been fully addressed. Beneath the laughter, there was an undercurrent of unspoken words, unresolved tensions that needed to be confronted. She understood that the journey toward healing was not over. It had merely taken a detour through laughter and shared memories. As the night wore on, they engaged in light-hearted conversations, reminiscing about family traditions and the quirks that made each holiday unique. Miguel, now more at ease, joined them with a fresh batch of desserts, his earlier embarrassment forgotten. The delectable treats were met with delighted exclamations, their sweetness serving as a perfect metaphor for the reconciliation taking place before Manila's eyes. Yet, even amidst the joy, she could not shake the feeling that deeper conversations awaited them. Alejandro and Lucia, though laughing now, had each carried their burdens into the room. The pressures of adulthood, expectations, and personal struggles lingered in the air like a fog waiting to be lifted. Manila's maternal instincts urged her to dig deeper, to facilitate a dialogue that could unearth the truths that lay beneath the surface. As the evening continued, she observed her children carefully, seeking the right moment to guide the conversation toward these unspoken feelings. She wanted to encourage them to open up, to share their fears and frustrations. But for now, She allowed the laughter to fill the space, cherishing the harmony they had momentarily reclaimed. The clock chimed softly in the background, each toll reminding her of the precious time they had together. Manila felt a bittersweet ache in her heart, knowing that these moments were fleeting. The holiday season had a way of magnifying emotions, both joyous and sorrowful, and she was determined to make the most of it. With the warmth of the fire wrapping around them, Manila leaned back, allowing herself to savor the present. The laughter of her children echoed in her ears, a sweet reminder that despite the challenges they faced, they were still a family. The night had transformed from one of loneliness to one of connection, and she held on to that feeling tightly, hoping it would carry them through the days ahead. Yet, as the flames crackled and the shadows danced on the walls, she couldn't ignore the whispering thoughts in her mind. The love they shared was palpable, but so were the unresolved issues that lingered. Manila knew that they would need to confront these challenges together, but for now, she took solace in the moment, embracing the laughter, the love, and the hope that had returned to her home. As the evening progressed, the flickering flames of the fireplace cast a warm glow around the room, enveloping Manila and her children in a cocoon of comfort and intimacy. In this tranquil moment, they gathered on plush sofas, the soft crackle of the fire punctuating the air with a serene rhythm. The scent of pine from the Christmas tree mingled with the remnants of a sumptuous dinner, creating a nostalgic atmosphere that reminded them all of holidays past. However, beneath the surface of this idyllic scene, unresolved tensions simmered, threatening to disrupt the fragile peace. Miguel stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, the cold winter air nipping at his skin as he walked onto the expansive porch of the estate. Underneath a clear sky sprinkled with stars, he took a moment to collect his thoughts. The warmth of the house contrasted sharply with the chill outside, but he found solace in the quiet. He could hear snippets of conversation from inside, voices rising and falling in a symphony of familial dynamics. As he stood there, he inadvertently overheard a conversation between Alejandro and Lucia, their voices tinged with vulnerability. Alejandro's tone was low, almost conspiratorial, as he expressed his frustrations. He spoke of the pressures of his career, the weight of expectations that bore down on him like a heavy cloak. He confided in Lucia about the sacrifices he felt he had to make, the dreams he had shelved to meet the demands of his role as the eldest son. Lucia, in return, opened up about her own struggles. She shared her feelings of inadequacy, how her choices, though different from Alejandro's, were also laden with difficulty and judgment. Miguel stood still, listening intently, understanding that beneath the surface of their disagreements lay a profound yearning for acceptance and love. With newfound insight gained from eavesdropping, Miguel returned to the warmth of the house. He sensed that the evening could still be salvaged, that the bonds between the siblings could be strengthened if they only found a way to communicate openly. As he entered the living room, he noticed the slight apprehension still lingering in the atmosphere. The laughter from earlier had faded, replaced by a quiet tension that seemed to loom over them like a cloud. It was now or never. Gathering his thoughts, Miguel suggested a family outing for the following day, an idea that sparked a flicker of excitement in the room. He proposed a visit to the charity event that had once been a cherished family tradition. Memories flooded back to Manila, Alejandro, and Lucia, images of laughter, warmth, and a sense of purpose. Miguel's voice held a gentle authority, his years of service allowing him to guide the family toward healing. He spoke of the joy they used to find in giving back, of the connections they had fostered with the community through their charitable actions. Slowly, smiles returned to their faces as they contemplated the idea. Manila's heart swelled with gratitude as she watched her children exchange glances, a shared understanding beginning to bridge the gap between them. The mere suggestion of a shared experience seemed to ignite a spark of hope, offering them an opportunity to reconnect without the weight of expectations. It was a chance to reaffirm their ties, to remember the love that had once flourished amongst them. The idea of stepping into the world together, side by side, felt invigorating, a chance to create new memories while honoring the legacy of their father's foundation. Just as they were beginning to discuss the details of the outing, the shrill ring of Manila's phone sliced through the warm ambience of the room. She glanced at the screen, her heart racing as she recognized the caller. It was the director of her late husband's foundation, a name that had become synonymous with compassion and philanthropy. She answered the call, her pulse quickening with anticipation. The voice on the other end carried news that sent a wave of elation coursing through her veins. An unexpected donation had been made to the foundation, a significant sum that would enable them to expand their outreach and impact in the community. The director's enthusiasm was palpable, and as he shared the details, Manila felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. This news was not just a financial boon. It was a reminder of the legacy her husband had built, one that continued to thrive even in his absence. As she hung up the phone, the weight of the news settled around her like a warm embrace. She turned to her children, her voice trembling with emotion as she relayed the details of the donation. The room erupted in celebration, laughter filling the air once more. Manila felt the joy radiating from her children, their faces illuminated by the firelight, mirroring the warmth that had surged through her moments earlier. They embraced her tightly, a collective sense of purpose binding them together in that moment. In the midst of their celebration, Manila realized that this was not just a moment of joy. It was a turning point. The unexpected news had brought them closer, dismantling the barriers that had begun to rise between them. No longer were they merely a family burdened by unspoken grievances. They were a unified front, ready to face the future together. They began to discuss the possibilities that lay ahead, brainstorming ways to utilize the newfound resources to make a tangible difference in the community. The conversations flowed freely, ideas bouncing between them like the crackling flames of the fire. As the night wore on, laughter and stories filled the room, weaving a tapestry of connection that seemed to banish the shadows of the past. Manila marveled at the transformation taking place before her eyes. The weight of solitude that had clung to her for so long was lifting, replaced by the warmth of familial love and support. The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, while the stars outside twinkled like distant memories, each one a reminder of the lives they had touched and the lives they could still change. In that moment, Manila understood that family was not just about blood. It was about the bonds they forged through love, compassion, and understanding. They had faced their struggles, acknowledged their differences, and emerged stronger, united by shared purpose and hope. The promise of tomorrow felt brighter, filled with the potential for healing and growth. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the family decided to step outside for a moment, the cold air invigorating as they stood together under the vast expanse of the night sky. They looked up, captivated by the constellations, each one a symbol of their dreams and aspirations. Manila felt a sense of peace wash over her, knowing that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead as a united family, ready to embrace the future with open hearts and unwavering support. In that magical moment, surrounded by love and possibility, Manila knew that she would no longer be alone. Together, they would honor the legacy of her late husband, not just through the foundation he had built, but through the strength of their renewed connections. The holiday season had transformed into something infinitely more profound, a celebration of life, love, and the indomitable spirit of family.